Okay, we're going to determine the global extrema, aka max or min, of f of xy is equal to x cubed minus 2y on the domain x stays between 0 and 1 and y is between 0 and 1 as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is find and test the critical points and the boundaries. So we have to, I'll write that down. So we're going to find the critical points and the boundaries, okay? And we're going to plug both of those, whatever we find, into the function to find the global maximum and the global minimum, if there are one, or if there are some, I guess. Right? So we're going to find both of those. All right. So first of all, let's try to find the critical points. So that would be where f sub x, f sub y wait. Okay. So at the same time, how should I word this? So at the same time, our f sub x, and f sub y each have to be either 0 or do not exist, okay? Alright, so for the first one, we're going to take the partial with respect to x, partial derivative of this x to the third minus 2y. So that's going to equal a 3x squared. And then if we try to do the same thing for the y, then we get x third minus 2y, and we just pull out the coefficient of negative 2. So what we see here is actually that this one here, this f sub y, is never going to equal 0, right? And it's never going to be undefined or not exist because it is negative 2. So what that means is there are no critical points in the interior of this domain here, okay? So there are no critical points, so no critical points. So what that means is we just basically have to go straight to the boundary and see where we can find a maximum or a minimum value, okay? So that's what we're going to do on the next slide. So here's our function again. So f of xy is equal to x cubed minus a 2y. And here's our domain. Domain is given by x goes from 0 to 1. So this is our x range or our x boundary. And y goes from 0 to 1, okay, including the endpoints, right? So what we're going to do is test the boundary points. So test boundary points. And for this, I'm going to say the boundary points are 0, 0. That's one of the corners of our boundary, right? Another corner would be 0, 1. Another corner would be 1, 0. And the last one would be 1, 1. Okay, so we're just going to test those out and see what kind of values we get out of it. So for the first one, we have f of 0, 0. So we would get 0 cubed minus 2 times 0. So that would just give us a 0. F of 0, 1 would give us 0 cubed minus 2 times 1. So that's a negative 2, right? And then we have f of 1, 0. So that's going to be a 1 cubed minus 2 times 0. So that just gives us a positive 1. And lastly, we have f of 1, 1. So that's 1 cubed minus 2 times 1. So that would be 1 minus 2, which is a negative 1. Okay, so at this point, since we normally what we would do is after we plug in the boundary points, then we could plug in and try the critical points as well and get values for those. But since we didn't have any critical points, we couldn't do that here. But if you do have some, if you do find some in a problem, then you would plug them in at this point, and then we would compare all of the values, okay? It's not that much different, we just didn't have any critical points to plug in. So here, we see that negative 2 is the lowest value that we got, so that's going to be our global minimum, okay? Not local, but global, because we're talking about on the domain that we were given, right? On this domain, this is the lowest point that we see. And then the highest point that we see is actually this positive one. It's not too positive, but it's the highest one that we see here, so this is going to be our global maximum. Okay, and these other points are kind of just there. They don't really go as high as we want or as low as we want. So that's it. That's pretty much it. I'll write our summary on the next slide. So we have our global minimum, which is, it was f of 0, 1. That's equal to negative 2. Okay, and the point was 0, 1. All right, and then our global maximum was given by f of, I believe it was 1, 0, and then it was equal to 1, a value of 1, and this was the point 1, 0. Right? Okay, so that's that wraps it up for this practice problems video. I hope that helps, and happy studying.